The next thing I look at is the competitive intelligence report, and this is really key in understanding why my company performed as it did. In the uh, footwear industry report, I got some key insights on the cost side of the equation. The competitive intelligence report is going to give me a lot of insights on the positioning side of the equation. Notice that there are 4 regions. It produces a product per region. Today, I'm just going to look at North America, and obviously, because I'm the administrator, it gives me choice of company. It'll just have which company, and your numbers will be over here. It'll say company, whatever you are, versus the industry average. As I get this, the first thing I look at is in the internet segment, did anybody jump out and either grab or lose a lot of market share? And sure enough, I can see that B grabbed quite a bit of market share, and everybody else is relatively close. E stepped it up a little bit. So let me see why B got so much. They offered a 7-star shoe, 50 models at $70. Notice that $70 is $5 or more cheaper than the next offering. Plus, they offered free shipping. So, no real surprise to me why they uh, did well in terms of their market share because they offered uh, highest PQ, tied for the highest PQ, but low models. And again, I really want you to understand that these models are just as powerful a differentiator as are the star ratings for the SQ ratings. This is interesting because their price was well below everybody else. Plus, they offered free shipping. So the first thing I check is, well, did they induce channel conflict? So I come down to here and say, is this price more than 40% above that $45? And the answer is yes. So they didn't induce any channel conflict. And now I'm really kind of puzzled. So I go over here back to my performance benchmarks, and I scroll down and I say, I wonder how much money they'd made. Now I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to make an assumption that B made the fewest or the smallest amount of money. Just looking at their prices, that seems like a reasonable assumption in terms of their operating profit. Their operating profits are still pretty good. Now they got about probably 40% more market share than everybody else. So the question is, are their profits more than 40% less? And I would say, doesn't look like it. Here, they lost quite a bit of ground to the industry average. Not nearly as much here. Here, quite a bit of ground. Not as much here. So in North America and Asia Pacific, I would say that B, given their volume, probably made more money in internet than the industry average. The other two, and it's true for North America and Asia Pacific. Europe, Africa, and Latin America would be a lot closer. I say this not to try to trigger an internet price war, but to say you can sometimes take a look at that and figure it out. Now, what if I'd have seen their profits were $5 a shoe? Well, then I would go, they're probably going to do something different next time because they didn't make a lot of money there. So if that's all the market share they got extra based on that low price, had they only been making $5 a shoe, I wouldn't worry about them. Given that they're fairly competitive on the price, this is something I'm going to have to take a look at. Do I need to try to um, maybe not let them have quite that much market share in the future? Then I come down into the wholesale segment and I look again at who got the market share. F pulled some of the market share. No real surprise there because they had one of the higher performances, but relatively balanced. D gave up some market share. C gave up some market share. Other than that, relatively balanced. E actually gave up some market share, but not a lot. The yellow indicates that they had a stock out. The stock out, as long as this number's 100 or less, I'm very happy. So I would have to say for B and F, they about had it exactly right. To have that kind of losses, that sort of amount of loss is about perfect. You can see that A, C, E, and G picked up. So they actually sold more shoes than their retailer demand was for. Why? These folks ran out, and some people walked in and said, well, okay, I'll buy those. Don't be surprised, though, if these numbers don't add up to less than what these numbers add up to. This time they're going to be actually very close. Um, so, and like we already know from looking at the prior product, E has got a lot of shoes left in inventory. So they thought they were going to sell a whole lot more shoes than they sold. So if I'm E, then I ask myself, well, why did I sell so much fewer shoes than I thought I was going to sell? And this is where I start going to those competitive Positioning factors. First of all, I offered 200 models. That was the highest in the industry. There were a couple of companies that were lower, so my models don't really tell the tale. Advertising is fairly close. G cut their advertising quite a bit. So if they got a little more aggressive on price, then that can offset that somewhat. Or if they got very aggressive down here in the promotions, that may, and it does show that they got fairly aggressive in the promotions. That will kind of balance each other out. Again, I do a very detailed analysis. But if I'm really E, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the industry leaders, A, B, and F in terms of market share here. And I would say, okay, they offer 2 stars less. As a rule of thumb, I would say a star is worth about $1.50 to $2. So there's a 2-star difference, probably a maximum of a $4 price difference, but there is a $7 price difference between the two of us. So that explains a little bit of it. My advertising was less than theirs. My rebate offer was less than theirs. So I'm kind of getting a picture for why they had so much more demand. Likewise, I come over here to A. Well, actually, I'm going to go to B. Same number of stars. I've got a lot more models. And again, the models are very popular. I would say that difference of models, this is really a guess on my part, is probably worth about 2 stars. To go from 50 to 200, that might be an exaggeration. It may be between 1 and 2 stars, but it's not an insignificant difference. But you can see it's a $10 difference in shoes. So if you use my rule of thumb, $1.50 to $2 per star, you can see they've almost got me priced down 5 stars, which that number of models, that difference in models isn't going to make up for it. They also outspent me somewhat in advertising. They had a better rebate offer. So yeah, I'm getting a pretty clear picture as to why their demand was so much higher than mine. And that explains who got the sales that they got. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to trigger a race to the bottom. This is where, again, you want to figure position, trade-off, and fit in your value chain. Whether you run high SQ or low SQ, high models or low models, those are strategic choices. I can sell any shoe you give me at any SQ and model combination as long as you allow me to set the price. So it's not like there's some magical thing there. It's about how am I going to choose strategically to position my company, and then I have to price the shoe correctly to make it sell at that. And this is just giving you a sense of the major dynamics. And so now I get a sense of why did my shoes sell as they did. In the case of E, simply put, for a 7-star 200 model shoe, $55 was too high a price. Or you could say at $55, I needed to raise my models up to the next higher level. You can approach that any way you want, but the big 3 right here, something needed to change to make your shoes more attractive to the customers. Last thing I look at is the private label segment. First thing I look at over here is the demand was 1.4 million and we had just over 2 million offered. Okay, so not everybody got their orders accepted. And so I look in here, A got some accepted, but not all. B got all of theirs accepted. D got all theirs accepted. E or F and G. Excuse me. Okay, now I understand that. But let me show you just how volatile the private label can be. What if A had bid $34.98? They had cut their bid by $1.02. Well, they would have been just under Team F. They would have been under Team G and under Team D. So with their pairs offered of 752, they wouldn't have sold any shoes. They wouldn't have sold any shoes, and they would have sold about 200 to 300 shoes. Again, I didn't take the time to do the math. So for want of $1 or $2 lower in bid, the market looks substantially different. And that's the tricky part about private label. I clicked into the other 3 regions. This was the only region where there were more shoes offered than a higher demand. Again, private label is a unique situation that requires a lot of thought. It's not a great place to make a home, but sometimes it can be a great place to make a lot of profits or keep your factories humming if you understand what everybody else in the industry is doing and how that should affect what you bid. The last part of each of these pages is these strategic group maps. I'll be honest with you, I don't like them. I like the fact that it shows you relative market share and how they're positioned. What I don't like is where it says company strengths and company weaknesses. You need to take that word strengths and weaknesses out and put in there company A above average, whereas company A below average in terms of its positioning. So you can see for company A, they're well above the average in advertising and below in SQ, and I mean free shipping is obvious. Over here in the wholesale segment, it's delivery time. This doesn't mean that their advertising is really a strength. They may be spending too much. This doesn't mean that their SQ rating is really a weakness. That may be exactly where they intend to position their shoe, and they have got it figured out, and they've got it priced right, and they're getting a lot of market share. But you can see they get flagged for the SQ rating because it's 0.7 stars below the industry average. They got flagged for the delivery time because they're running a 3-week delivery time against an industry average of 2.4 weeks. Again, these are not big deals. So don't be trapped into those. Go, oh, I need to fix that. Or, oh, I'm doing good here. Oh, I need to fix these things. No, no, no. You have to put them in context. Sometimes the things that'll flag as your strengths are really weaknesses for you, and the things that'll flag as a weakness is really you executing your strategy well. So be very careful with those. I'm just going through the North American. In reality, I do this with all 4 of the regions. Often there are highly similar trends between all of them, but sometimes one region or two you'll see a very different picture, and you need to check all of those out. The last report is the company operations report, and that'll be up next.